Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. It is exactly 3 after 12 o'clock. And as I have been reminding you all morning that we'll be talking with Sheryl Rahme. She's the director of Changes Treatment Center. And we're going to be talking about a specific subject. I mean, when I tried to set up this interview yesterday and I spoke to one of the ladies at Changes, I said I'd like to speak with Christiane and Dominique about a whole host of things, how to prepare for your loved one's homecoming after having been in treatment. Then there's guilt and shame. There's a whole host of issues one could talk about. And the lady, I think it was Kate, that said to me, can I suggest that you speak to Sheryl Rahme? She's the director of Changes, and she can actually talk about almost anything. Then she hastened on to say that the other people are equally good, but Sheryl Rahme really has a finger on the pulse. So I'm delighted to have the director of Changes Treatment Center online with me this morning to talk about guilt and shame. A very good morning to you. Or is it afternoon? I think it's afternoon already.
It's just
Uh,
afternoon.
very good afternoon. Welcome.
Afternoon,
And
Julie.
lovely to have you here. Might I just
Thank
add
you.
here that you have an amazing team at Changes. I've had interactions with some of them, Dominique, Christiane, even Tanya. I think she's out in the front. Um, I've forgotten the gentleman's name. And then also at the farm, you have Clive. Absolutely awesome. These people are so dedicated. They are so caring. And they really put their heart and soul into what they do. They care about the people that they're working with to help them get better. So, Sheryl, you and your team are doing amazing work. God bless. God
Thank
keep
you.
you people in good health to continue healing lives. Thank you so much
Thank you,
once again.
Julie. Much appreciated.
Okay, thank you for being with us on the show. And now I want to raise the issue around guilt, which we know is a feeling of responsibility or remorse for something you've done wrong. It might be an offense, it's crime, it might be something small, it might be something big, whether it's real or imagined. When we talk about guilt and shame, is this something that all of us, regular people, sick people, mental health patients, do all of us go through these feelings of guilt, shame, remorse? Why does this happen? And how can we best deal with it? And to stop beating up on ourselves when we feel this way?
I think that's such an amazing question. Um, I think yes. I think all of us as human beings can experience guilt and shame. Um, and I think for a myriad of different reasons, Julie. One is it's systemic. I think it comes from our families, it comes from our culture, it comes from our religion sometimes. I think it comes from our politics. It comes from trying to instill right and wrong, I think, from a very early age. But sometimes I think we instill it in a way that we question your person rather than the actions. And that's the difference between the shame and the guilt. Shame is, I must be a flawed human being, versus the guilt is, I feel terrible for what I have done. And I think when we work with the substance abuse patients and families, their guilt and shame is overt. It's much stronger. I think somebody who's not struggling with mental health or an addiction will feel it, can challenge it themselves, work through it, maybe chat to somebody else, maybe a mentor or a spiritual leader or a teacher or a doctor, and they can deal with it. With mental health patients and substance abuse patients, they feel it as it's the most dire thing that could have happened to them. And hence, I think it's something we in treatment centers spend hours working through, challenging the guilt, questioning the shame, like calling them out, take responsibility for what you've done, but not that you are a damaged human being, if I'm making
Uh,
sense.
you absolutely, and I'm just wondering if that's not the reason perhaps why we have so many patients relapsing, because they feel they are so riddled with guilt and shame, and their loved
Mm.
ones back home don't know how to deal with them. So when they
Spot
do
on.
come home, or when they slip up, um, they are sent on this journey of absolute guilt and shame. They are made to feel like absolutely nothing, possibly
Mm.
dirt. And we kind of, the type of language we use with them is, oh, you've let me down, or can't you see things, you don't follow through, and I didn't expect anything better from you, etc., etc., etc. And what we're
Correct.
doing, which we don't realize, is we're pushing them further and further into the ground.
Yes. So spot on. I think if should they relapse, we feel devastated. We are, we've invested, the family invests so much in this rehabilitation journey, whether it's mental health, addictions, sometimes even school. Because we invest, we tend to put extra pressure on them to perform and to please us as their loved ones, especially if we've paid for the treatment, or we have used our medical aids, or we've, you know, extended ourselves for them. And should they relapse, we don't say, oh, something's wrong with your program. What are you going to do about it? How are we going to get you back into recovery? We shame them. And we shame them because somehow the family feels that if I say the right thing at the right time, the worst possible way, maybe I'll change their mind, their thinking, and then they'll stop. And addiction, particularly, is a disease of guilt and shame. And the more we tell them how wrong they were, or how they've let us down or disappointed us, we don't build them up. So we actually chiseling away more and more at the self-esteem and the self-worth, and making them feel less than what they might have felt before originally. So I think a lot of
Cheryl,
responsibility. Mm,
let's look at the flip side of what you've just said now. And I always wonder about this. Um, how do you then actually talk to them? What is it that you say? What type of language do you use? Because you are disappointed that they've slipped up.
mm,
You have spent a lot of money. You've invested in them, not
yes.
only monetarily, but emotionally.
Mm,
You've truly invested, and it takes so much of energy to try and help them through recovery. What is the appropriate language you use, because they can be very manipulative and just twist everything around on you,
mm,
and also probably get all the wrong signals from you. I mean, you can say, I
yes.
love you, I'll never give up on you, I'm here for you, I'll walk the journey with you, I'll support you. But I kind of wonder that if they don't perhaps use that to their advantage. This goes, obviously, as you've said, to children at school, even a troubled relationship between husband and wife, or
Mm,
partners, or whatever. All of this plays out if you don't use the right language.
yes. We suggest that when you're addressing something like this, let's say relapse, for example, speak about the behavior, not the person. And I recommend to use 8 words or less. Because if we go into long tirades of you did this and you did this and you did this, and it hurt me and devastated me and disappointed me, that's where the manipulation opportunities arise. But that's when we're almost shaming them. So,
Okay.
for example, the examples you gave were spot on because you said I. So if you start with the I have invested. I had hopes for you to have a strong recovery. However, your relapse has disappointed me, and I'm hoping that you're going to do something about it. So it's quite empowering for the family. But if they feel ashamed by it, that's their own guilt for relapsing and the shame that they haven't yet addressed. But you are not shaming them. So by starting a sentence with I feel, I am, I did, That's claiming ownership for yourself. But then it's okay to say, I'm disappointed in your relapse. Or when you relapse, you disappear. That concerns me. So you speak about the actions of the person in the relapse versus just the emotional component of you've let us all down, yourself, us, family, loved ones, partners, etc.
So you don't say that at all. You talk about the action and you start the sentence with I. I
Yes.
feel this way. And like you say, don't make it a very long winded discussion. Is that
Mm-mm.
not a cop out then for them, Cheryl?
Julie, I think they'll cop out if they can cop out anyway.
Oh,
When
okay.
they've relapsed, we're no longer dealing with the same person that was in treatment or in recovery. So, substances change the thinking and the behavior. So if they should have a relapse, we tend to want to still talk to the person who was in recovery, clean and sober,
Mm,
or stable on their
mhm.
medication. And once they've relapsed, they automatically are going to be in manipulative mode, dishonest mode, projective, trying to find fault with you. Well, look at what you did on Friday night. You looked at me funny, or you weren't home when I got home. So they will definitely try to put it back onto you. That's where the 8 words or less becomes very helpful, and not to get into that debate with them, because it's almost like
Okay.
a fishing expedition. We throw the rod, the fish bites, we reel it in, and then the fish wants to swim away, then we want to reel it back in. And because we're the ones that are sane, we need to be the ones that are setting those inner boundaries for ourselves to not have these debates and arguments and challenges where we perpetuate the guilt and shame, and we're not actually addressing the issue at hand, which is your relapse changed your behavior.
Okay. In any relationship, you're going to have these situations of obviously guilt and shame. Are you saying that in all of those instances, whether it's a marital relationship, whether it's even a situation at work between manager and employee, because these games play out wherever you are, we play these mind games, don't we?
We
Um,
do.
do we stick with that golden rule of the 8 word sentence, the less said the better? What if what if the opposite party, perhaps that is then being manipulative, what if they want a full on conversation? Are they trying to corner you to possibly have a showdown?
More than likely, I think, yes, they are. I think some of the principles apply in all our relationships, and that is we should take personal responsibility. And I think that's what recovery teaches all of us, the families as well as the addicts in recovery. The more responsibility you take, the less drama unfolds in your life, and the healthier your relationships begin. So, if you're in a situation with a colleague at work, or a boss, or a partner, or teacher, and the blame game is ensuing, then the only person who's going to stop the blame game is the one that takes that responsibility. So, maybe you could speak in a few more words than 8. Um, but again, choose your words wisely. Speak in the I. I'll take responsibility for me, but I'm also going to hand responsibility of your actions back to you. Gaslighting, I think, is really what we're talking about, happens in all relationships. And it happens when generally somebody's done something wrong and they can't take responsibility or ownership of it. So they try and pass it off onto you, thinking that if you will take the blame, then it abdicates me and then I don't have to deal with too much. So the way to stop gaslighting again is not to get hooked into the he said, she said, but rather look at I'll take responsibility and I'll make an amend. I'll say sorry for what I've done, but I'm not going to take your responsibility for you. And, I think sometimes we want to debate with people because we want to get our word across. We want to be heard. With chemically dependent people, we don't often get heard, hence the 8 words. And if somebody's in a rage or overtly emotional, I don't think they can hear us. So the 8 words becomes
Communicate.
effective then.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to go for an ad break. We'll be back with you in a minute or two. I also want you to give us suggestions of how we deal with guilt and shame. And I've also been told that my next guest is somewhere on the road. So, yippee, that means more time for you and I, if you can afford more time,
Okay,
so we can talk about other stuff as well. So, please stay on the
lovely.
line.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you, Julie.
With us. WhatsApp 061-766-0355 or email info@salammedia.com or call us on 011-680-0355.
Do you want to make a real impact this Ramadan? Donate your zakah to Ashraful Aid. Your zakah can help feed an orphan, support a widow, build a home for a refugee family, sponsor a HIF student, and much more. With Ashraful Aid, you can make a real difference. Visit our website at www.ashrafulaid.org to make a donation. Make your Ramadan meaningful with Ashraful Aid.
Freedom Stationery supply Marlin and Marlin Kids pens to me and my school friends. They supply just about everything we need to help us get a better education, from books to files to rulers. In fact, any any accessory we need. Freedom Stationery. Education for the nation. What does accessory mean?
This Ramadan, spread the love with Sunshine D margarine, the perfect addition to your seri table for spreading, baking, and cooking. Sunshine D is rich in essential vitamin A, E, and D, and is the tastiest way to get their day or night started. Sunshine D tastes nice, no lies.
At Sentio, our Invest for Good philosophy is based on a genuine desire to use our investment skills for the benefit of broader society by investing responsibly, giving charitably, and developing talent that will transform the investment industry. Visit www.sentio-capital.com for more information about our Sharia investment products and start saving with us today. Sentio Capital. Invest for good. Sentio Capital Management is an authorized financial services provider.
In the aftermath of the tragic earthquakes in Syria and Turkey, thousands of survivors are struggling and in need of food, shelter, and life-saving aid. This Ramadan, take a closer look at the countless lives that have been turned upside down. You have the power to help. Your donation is the lifeline, a beacon of hope in an otherwise hopeless situation. Please donate today. Visit donate.unhcr.org/RamadanZA.
These days, I'm more health conscious than ever. So tonight, it's stir fry for dinner, cooked in healthy Helios pure sunflower cooking oil. Helios is pure sunflower goodness, packed with omega-6. That's good for your heart, and is approved as part of the Heart and Stroke Foundation eating plan.
Dinner's ready!
Helios, pure sunflower cooking oil. A healthy family is a happy one.
The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked, which charity is best? He replied, a drink of water. Africa. Every day, 2 billion people wake up and have no access to water and sanitation. Sponsor a water well for 14,800 rand, a borehole in Afghanistan for 49,500 rand, or a borehole in Africa for 55,000 rand with Africa Muslims Agency. Give water as a means of sadaqah jariyah today. Call AMA on 011 834 8685 or donate online. Africa Muslims Agency, commemorating 35 years of empowering, educating, inspiring.
Connect and stay ahead with Salam Media. This is Salam Media, coming to you live from South Africa.
It is exactly 12:23. This is news, not news and views. I keep forgetting that I'm doing the mid-morning show right here in the month of Ramadan. This is the mid-morning talk show with me, Julie Ali. Welcome back. And of course, Allow Media is all about humanitarian journalism. We are talking to Sheryl Rahme, Director of Changes Treatment Center. We're talking guilt and shame. And as our next guest is on the road, I don't think she's going to be joining us. I'm going to stretch this interview with Sheryl. I'm going to ask her to tell me about changes, how the treatment center started, and then we can also talk about, how long they've been in operation and everything around changes. And then I want to touch on another very important issue. At the beginning of Ramadan, I interviewed Dr. Nazim Abrams from the Light on the Horizon Treatment Center, and he spoke about Muslim substance abusers going into, going to rehab centers in the month of Ramadan, thinking that, they're in a safe space. Perhaps, yes, they are in a safe space. They want to be clean for that time. But what do you do? How do you prepare for their homecoming? So we'll ask Sheryl to tell us about that as well. Undoubtedly, it's going to be a bit of a lengthy discussion. We do wrap up at 1:00, but I think it's important to hear how you interact, how you prepare, and how you interact with your loved one once they return home from rehab or a halfway house or wherever it is that they've been to clean up their acts. Welcome back, Sheryl Rahme, the director of the Changes Treatment Center. So you do know what's coming, all of the questions that I'm going to put to you during the show. Let's wrap up on this whole shame and guilt thing. And I'm particularly interested in talking about shame. We know it's a feeling of inferiority. It involves the perception of oneself as a failure or feeling unacceptable to others. This is crucially vital, because if we make our loved ones feel shame, we're not going to help their recovery, are we?
No, not at all.
How do we engage with them?
It's a fine line. It's like a tightrope. You got to tread so carefully, because if you don't get it right, you will slip off. And I think the first thing a lot of families do, and I don't think it's just Muslim families or traditional families, but we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about it as it is. We use cliches. We minimize. We don't talk about it to extended family, our friends, our loved ones. And that's one of the first ways that we address guilt and shame. So, finding a way to start telling somebody, this is what I'm going through. When they don't react negatively, it almost like lifts the shame for that period of time. And if somebody says, I relate, I've also gone through that, that's where the shame gets addressed. So what we do in Changes and in most treatment centers around the world is we use the 12-step program, and we use group therapy. And group therapy is one of the most powerful tools we have to address guilt and shame, because from their peers who've done equally wrong things, they share their experience, and somebody goes, but why are you ashamed? What I've done is worse than you. And the guy or girl will say, yeah, but I feel worse than you. And as they're talking it through, unbeknownst to them, they're addressing their guilt and their shame.
Wow.
So when we have a family support group, we run our family support groups on Zoom, and Julie, you're welcome to share that link with anybody in the community that would like some support. When we address these shameful topics, and one person says, I relate, I've been through that, it was like that for me, somebody in that forum will go, I'm not that bad.
Wow.
Thank goodness this is common for this illness. And that's the most powerful mechanisms we have for treating guilt and shame. And then for us as families, as I was mentioning earlier, take personal responsibility. We say own your own stuff. So try not to pick at what this other person has done wrong, but look at, there was wrongdoing, but it's my responsibility how I'm going to react to it. It's my responsibility to take what's mine and let go of what's somebody else's. And I think recovery is about awareness. So becoming aware that there's so many complexities of addiction. And whilst it's like almost compounded like in an onion, if you take an onion with its skin still on, that's a good way of looking at addiction because it's compound, it's protected with that layer. And if you peel that layer off, your eyes start watering, we start weeping, crying, because we can't believe this has happened to somebody we care about or somebody we love. And once it's out and it's out in the open, you'll notice like your eyes don't run as much. The more we talk about recovery and addiction and our shame and our guilt with people who either are in the know or people who are going through it or have been through it, our guilt and shame pales in comparison. And after a couple of years, because it's not quick, we start realizing what we've done wrong and we change that. And then we work on what we're still doing wrong. And that's that personal responsibility. And then we hope that our loved ones are still going to their 12-step meetings and they're still working on their guilt and shame. When they get up to step 5, that's when their guilt and shame really starts being addressed privately. So they write it in their step work, they share it with their counselor, their sponsor, their groups, and their higher power. So when it
Okay.
comes out, it eases.
All right. You've touched on the steps, which is very important. I'd like you to talk to us about those steps. I think they're 5 steps. Am I right?
12.
No. What's it? Am I referring to the 5 pillars? Okay.
Yes.
Right. Let me just look at the whole issue around shame from a different perspective. People are judgmental.
Yes.
And you find certain communities more so than others. They feel very ashamed about the fact that their loved one is in recovery or has relapsed or is using substances. So there's a lot of shame, where to the point where in families the substance abuser is totally, totally. They cut him off totally from the entire family, or certain members of the family cut him or her off and will not have any interaction with him. That worries me because obviously he or she picks up on it and really feels very, very ashamed by their actions. Is that not pushing them further into addiction?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Some people will say that the fact that the one family member didn't partake in their recovery or talk to them, that was the turning point of when they realized I've done this to my family, and then they've worked harder to bring it back. And then there's been some that have felt pushed aside and furthered into the guilt and the shame. But I think it's about understanding the disease in the family. We say that the addict takes the drugs and the family gets sick. And different family dynamics start occurring. For example, if there's a mom and a dad, and they've got a child who's an addict, one of the parties might be tough, the other one will be soft. We call them the marshmallow. And the addict will pick up on that and draw the division. Then very often the siblings, it's not the same emotional connection. So they will feel deep empathy for their parents and worry about their parents. And they will then take a different role. And that role will be protecting the marshmallow or the tough parent from the ramifications of their brother or sister's addiction. And very often it's the siblings and the aunts and uncles that will banish them and cast them aside. And that's
Okay.
often because they've witnessed the trauma the rest of the family have gone through.
And I guess
So
that's a
it's
natural consequence, isn't it? You can't even,
often,
because you can't force the aunts and the uncles and the siblings to love and accept
mm-mm,
your addicted loved one. You can't force them.
correct. And particularly if they've caused them some harm.
Mm.
Very often they've stolen things, they've let them down, they've made promises, not been able to meet them. So they remember that. The family, the siblings witness this, and they're quite pragmatic. It's like if your behavior is not acceptable, you have to move out. You've got to move away from the family circle. Whereas the parents they struggle, they can't let go very easily. So there's no right and there's no wrong, but that's why the whole family should be getting help. They should all be attending support groups, should all be educating themselves, not educating themselves on what that drug does, but what can I do to help myself and my family when there's a loved one in it. I can often, it's best for me to speak from my own perspective. I came from a family of 4, and my brother and my sister had addiction. And my mom and dad took very different stances. My mom was the complete codependent, and my dad was too firm and too tough. And my one sister cut them out completely, would have nothing to do with them. And I went for help. And I joined a support group in 1980.
Ooh,
And from then till now,
gosh.
I've spent most of my adult life working and understanding this disease so that I could get better for myself, but then also help other families who are struggling, because I understood they didn't want to be addicts. They experimented with drugs. They liked the way it made them feel, and it changed my family. And the way my parents were coping and my sister was coping wasn't helping. But my behavior and my growth slowly but surely started helping the rest of the family. And, we're sitting 35, 40 years later
Oh,
with a very different relationships, different understanding, and a lot more honesty. People often say, but how do you feel about having family members that are addicts? And I said, I'm not ashamed. I feel for them. I wish they hadn't gone down those roads. But the growth that I've made in taking responsibility for myself, educating myself, going for help, talking to other families who are going through it, and working on not shaming. It was very important for me not to shame them for being sick, to
because it
call
is
them
a
on their
disease.
behavior.
Mhm,
Correct.
mhm.
But I think we all get so desperate, Julie, that we do, shame them into stopping using. If they could stop using, they
They
would.
would. Absolutely. Okay, Cheryl, it is 12:37. I think it's time for an ad break. I'm just waiting for a thumbs up from my engineer. Yes, he says it is time for an ad break. When we come back, I want to talk about the 5 pillars. I also want to talk about, obviously, how you prepare the do's and the don'ts for when your loved one comes home, from rehab. And oh gosh, and so much more. There just isn't enough time, but let's talk right after the ad break. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Is sustainability engineered? Africa's first publicly traded Sharia-compliant sukuk on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange provides regulated and transparent access to superior and sustainable investment opportunities in the agriculture value chain. Agrarius is brought to you by 274, leaders in Sharia-compliant investing. Don't get left behind. WhatsApp 011 442 2467 or visit 274.com for more. 274 Investment Managers is an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
From samosas and half moons to cook sisters and roti, everything between iftar and seri makes sunfoil cooking oil an essential part of your Ramadan. Approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a healthy diet, This blessed month, give your family the best with Sunfoil, because tradition just tastes better.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness. And every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and free zakat calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
In the aftermath of the tragic earthquakes in Syria and Turkey, thousands of survivors are struggling and in need of food, shelter, and life-saving aid. This Ramadan, take a closer look at the countless lives that have been turned upside down. You have the power to help. Your donation is the lifeline, a beacon of hope in an otherwise hopeless situation. Please donate today. Visit donate.unhcr.org/RamadanZA.
Southern Africa Dawah Network is a non-profit organization striving to uplift the disadvantaged and empowering through education and dawah. Donate to the SADN centers, the M.A. Motala Islamic Center, as well as our Islamic centers in Amoti, Imtalumi, Botshabelo, and Castile. Donate your zakat and lillah today. Contact Farooq Sheikh 076-321-0650, Yusuf Mohammadi 072-259-3457, or the SADN head office 031-304-8000. Our account, Standard Bank, account number 050-856-294 for your zakat, or 050-879-790 for your lillah. Dawah through education, education through dawah, the Southern Africa Dawah Network.
Are you looking for a cross-border road transport company that is committed in achieving high safety standards, who is fast and efficient, and also excellent customer service? Gardi Global specializes in cross-border transport from South Africa to Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi. Gardi Global, situated at 10 Daniel Road, Benrose, Johannesburg. For inquiries, contact our trained staff on 011-614-3108 or email info@gardiglobal.co.za. Safe long haul into Africa is our business. Gardi Global Transport.
After 11 years, Syria remains the world's largest refugee crisis.
We didn't flee from Assad just to come and die here.
More than 6.8 million Syrians have been forced to flee their country since 2011.
All of my country destroyed now, and I fear about my children.
And another 6.9 million remain internally displaced.
Our condition is very bad. We have no proper tents, nor a proper living. I have 10 children and we do not get any aid.
The vast majority, approximately 5.2 million refugees, have found refuge in neighboring countries such as Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. Penny Appeal South Africa has been distributing hot meals and food parcels to food insecure families and provided mobile housing to those in need. Your donation, no matter how small, can make a big difference. Visit our website www.pennyappeal.org.za or call us on 031 110 0573. Penny Appeal South Africa. Small change, big difference.
Connect and stay ahead with Salam Media. This is Salam Media, coming to you live from South Africa.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It is exactly 12:43. This interview will run on up to about 1 o'clock exactly. And of course, my guest is Sheryl Rahme, Director of Changes Treatment Center. And we've had an anonymous caller wanting to know, Sheryl, welcome back, whether you do in fact take on Muslim patients. Are you able to cater for their halal needs?
Yes, we are. We take it quite seriously. So we provide cooking utensils, particularly for halal food. We purchase from a halal butcher. We also accommodate fasts.
Okay.
And we have to work around it with medication sometimes because they
Okay.
do need meds.
Right.
But currently, the patients that we've got, they wake up early, take their meds, eat, pray, start their morning fast. So we do accommodate it as best we can, particularly
Wonderful.
through holy holidays, because it doesn't disrupt the therapeutic day. So they
Yeah.
do get to say their prayers, to do their fasts, and we do cater halal.
Wonderful. And all of those details, in fact, your contact details is on your website. They can go to Sheryl at changesrehab.coza. Am I right?
That's my personal email
Oh, that's
address.
personal. Okay.
The
What is,
website is www.changesrehab.co.za.
thank you for that. And if any of our listeners and viewers have missed those numbers, please contact us here at Salam Media. We'll gladly pass all of that on to you. Sheryl, let's wrap up on guilt and shame. I'd like you to touch on the 5 pillars and then also the do's and don'ts. I don't think we have too much time, but let's try and squeeze in what we can regarding the homecoming of your loved one. Important, what is very, very important, not to trip them up, say the wrong thing, and then just have a big blow up.
Yes.
Just wrap up on shame, on guilt and shame, and then let's move on to the 5 pillars. What is it all about?
Yeah.
Why is it important?
Okay, we subscribe to the 12-step recovery programs. I'm not an advocate for them, but I do believe they work. So 12 steps as in Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Families Anonymous, Nar-Anon, and Co-Anon, which is for the families of addicts. The 12-step program is a very practical, spiritual, but hands-on way to recover. So the 12 steps, and we could have another meeting
Discussion
around
on
what
it.
it
Oh, with
is
pleasure. With
with
pleasure.
pleasure. But in a nutshell, we ask people to practice the 5 pillars of recovery, which means they go to 12-step meetings. They acquire a sponsor, which is a person the same sex as them, who's got at least 2 years of sobriety. They should have their own sponsor and they should be working the 12 steps.
The sponsor
Then,
should have their own sponsor. Okay,
yes.
got you.
And then that sponsor should have his grand sponsor. So it
Okay,
becomes like a
okay.
family tree.
Right, got you.
Then that sponsor needs to work the 12 steps. It's written work. There's books that you
Okay.
can buy. It's written work, step work.
Mhm.
And then we ask that they start giving back. So what the giving back is not that they're going to help other addicts, but in their first 6 months, they wash cups, they put out the chairs, they hand out the tokens. So, and then as they get sober longer, they can do more service where they can share, they can run meetings, etc. So it's sponsor, step work,
Meetings.
service, meetings, and then working really hard on a relationship with a higher power.
Okay.
So the 12 steps is not any kind of denominational religious program. Anybody who has a belief in a higher power or not is welcome to attend meetings, because step 2 is the step that starts them working, re-engaging with their higher power. So those 5 pillars should keep people clean and sober if they work them.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's talk about the homecoming of your loved one, the do's and don'ts, and because I guess you could trip them up so very easily, and things could blow up and become really ugly. A lot of families, with my time at Lifeline, I know that when a loved one was coming home, They treated them like royalty. They pulled out all the stops. And I'm kind of wondering, about that concept. Are we not rewarding them for all the wrong they've done? Should this just not be really a normal homecoming? I don't know. What and how do we dance around them during this time?
I think it's so important that we don't. I think it should be low key. They're coming home terrified. They are scared. They have apprehension about what to expect. I have written a booklet, which I will mail personally to you again. You're welcome to send it out to people who request it.
Thank
on
you.
what to do when they come home. So keep it low key. I often say to parents, clean out their bedroom with their permission so that they come home and there's no paraphernalia, no, drugs or alcohol left behind, but also not invasive. So not that you've gone in and wiped their whole life out, thrown away personal belongings. It's about less is more. Do less, say less, pay less. Like tone it down to.
There seems to be a call coming in on your side.
Sorry, I've killed it. So to do less and to get knowledge, I think is very important. I use my 5 tips. And the first one is never make an idle threat or promise. If you say you're going to do something, you've got to follow through.
Mm-hmm.
Less is more. Say less, do less, pay less. Third, the opposite of what we think, that's the truth. So whatever we're thinking in the first year or two, challenge it with the opposite, because is that possibly the truth? For example, he's going to come home and relapse. We don't know that. Maybe he'll come home and it'll be very tough and it might lead to a relapse, but it's not an absolute. And then get educated, find everything you know about the disease of addiction and more, and go to support groups. Don't leave the support groups when you're feeling better. Stick it out. And there's one more, and I cannot remember it. When I do, I'll remind you.
Okay. What I worry about is in a lot of instances, the person, the substance abuser, in the first place, or in most instances, has resorted to drugs. Perhaps, the first time around just for the fun of it, and then got hooked, and then start making movies in their heads and blames the whole world for the situation they're in. And kind of say it's your fault because you were too harsh on me, and because you threatened me. I did it to show you a point. Have you come across a lot of that? And is that kind of almost normal behavior and practice with recovering addicts?
So we come across it 100 out of 100.
Oh,
so it's that many. That's when they're still not well. So that is why they need rehab. Those are the areas that we tackle the most. So if they're coming home and saying that, they're not ready. They shouldn't be coming home because they haven't yet shifted to take full responsibility for themselves. There's a difference in saying, Mom, I believe that I had to use because you got divorced. However, I realized that I was using anyway, and that became an excuse. That's one way of them talking to you. The other one is saying, well, you got divorced. What did you expect was going to happen to me? I was traumatized. I started using and it made me feel better.
Mm-hmm.
That is still the cycle of addiction versus the cycle of recovery. They're either working recovery or a relapse. Okay. That's the only 2 works that they do. And when they're still blaming, they're still ill. And that's when the families need to be very mindful.
what is your advice to families when your loved one comes home and they still pointing blame at the whole, they're trapped in victim. They still trapped in victim mode because the rehab process should have freed them of that shackle. They, should have come to the realization and taken ownership and responsibility for the situation they're in. But when they come home, they're still stuck in victim mode. What is it that you ought to be doing? How do you point out that you're not well yet? You still need a lot of work. They'll probably be in denial. How do you navigate around this person?
So difficult. I think it's about, without being controlling, it's about being firm and saying, I hear you. I'm not agreeing with you. It shows me that you're not ready to be home yet. I would prefer you to move into a halfway house, do an outpatient program, do more meetings, work on your sponsor, take that to your therapist and work through it with them. I'm not equipped to engage at that level with you, and I'm not going to. It's best the families don't engage. It will just blow up into what it used to be pre-rehab.
And no threats. Obviously, the moment you threat, it's going to blow up into possibly even fisticuffs, I should imagine.
It has for many families. No idle threats or promises. Definitely not. So ask the treatment center what help they can give you. And generally, that's where the aftercare, the post-rehab becomes very important. And I know a lot of people can't afford post-rehab, but that's where the 12-step program is there for them. And we encourage that they do as many meetings. And if not, let the family find a support group for themselves, like Tough Love. Join it, go every week, and plan bottom lines of how I'm going to get through this week. So there is help available
for yourself, not the patient.
Yeah.
Let's talk very quickly before we wrap up. We've got about 4 minutes to go. You've talked about halfway house. What is it all about, and how does it help the patient?
It's a step down of sober environment. So they live with peers. There's a manager who's also a peer in recovery. So we give them the rules and the guidelines, and they call each other out to maintain and adhere the rules. It's a place of safety, but not control. There's also very little emotion, which is opposite of what they'd get if they got home. And it's more a structure. This is how you're going to live. You're going to venture out, but there's going to be accountability, but you're accountable to your peers. And as you get used to that, you'll be ready to slowly reintegrate back home. So it's something that helps the family as well as help the addicts. Generally, it gives them a good stance of a sustainable, long recovery when they learn how to just stop, focus on themselves, slowly integrate, but take responsibility.
How long does the patient have to be in a halfway house?
Each person is different. My recommendation is generally no less than 3 months, and they can stay up to 12 months. It depends on affordability and the state of that person's recovery. If you're not having settled feelings about your loved one, they should still stay in the halfway house. When your confidence is building and the trust is slowly starting to come back, that's when you can start talking about integration. Again, if they can't afford it, there's some cheaper ones. But then the 12-step meetings, they can do 90 meetings in 90 days. So a meeting every single day for 90 days. And that should shift them. If not, and they relapse, sometimes they need to almost like make it equal. And then they can actually start working without all that baggage, because that baggage is self-inflicted.
Okay, my final question, let's just be clear about this. we talk about the halfway house, but if they can't afford the halfway house, you're suggesting that they attend 90 meetings in 90 days. Where does one find that many meetings going around?
Fortunately, with COVID, it's one of the good things COVID did is it took NNAA online to Zoom. So there's about 20,000 meetings a day around the world. They will find a meeting. They'll be around Johannesburg. So if they look on the Narcotics Anonymous website, Joburg, Cape Town, Pretoria, Durban, and they should find a meeting in their time zone anywhere online. So it's doable, it's free of charge, they don't have to pay, and all they need to do is get a sponsor, work the steps, go to meetings, do some service, even online meetings, and work with a higher power.
What about, and this is truly my final question, what about continuity? If you're, let's assume, different organizations hold their meetings on different days, but they may not be talking about the same thing. They're talking about different things on different days. Regarding the patient, is he or she able to follow through? Is it still going to make sense to them and for them?
Yes, because it's a structured program, and it's not group therapy. Group therapy in a treatment center, we have to have continuity. So our meetings will go 5 nights a week, same therapist. But in the 12 steps, no, they read out the preambles, they have a topic, and with an open mind and open ears, they should relate to something that somebody is saying. And they can go anywhere in the world. I often pop into a Brooklyn meeting in the States.
Right.
And I battle to understand their accent.
Okay.
But it's a 12-step meeting, and they're talking about the same things we speak about in Newlands.
Okay. Sheryl, it was wonderful talking with you.
It was
Thank you
lovely
so
being
very
on your
much.
show, Julie.
Thank you for the extra time allowed to us on the show this morning. And undoubtedly, we will have you back again. And some of your
With
counselors
pleasure.
too. I mean, I think they have lots to
With
offer. So
pleasure.
God bless. Thank you indeed. Your
You
closing
too.
remarks on the show this morning, please.
I think you're not alone. Please reach out for help and learn everything you can, because it's not going away.
This is for the patient and the family as well. Both. The message is to both of them.
Yeah, help is available more now than ever before. You're not alone. Don't try and do it alone. It's dangerous.
Sheryl Rahme, Director of Changes Treatment Center, please keep up the great work at the center, including all of
Likewise.
your professionals that work with you. Wonderful talking to you. Go
You
well
too, Julie.
and
Blessings to you
continue.
too.
Thank you. Continue touching lives in a positive way. God bless.
We will. God bless you too. Take care. Bye.
It's exactly 1 after 1. Time for me to wrap up. Thank you indeed for your company. I do hope that you've enjoyed the shows this morning. And of course, I was blown away by all of the information shared by Sheryl Rahme. We do have a huge problem globally regarding substance abuse. And I think that was some very, very important information that you shared with us on the show this morning. For any further information that you might like, please go to the Changes Rehab website, or perhaps get hold of us here at Islam Media. We're more than happy to share anything with you. Till the next time, as always, which is next Wednesday morning, thank you for your company. Go well. Keep us in your du'as in this Mubarak 10 days of Ramadan, and we'll get together again. Assalamu alaikum and Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Ali.